coming to this meetup. We've had some really excellent speakers so far, and we have one final excellent speaker. This is Lior. He actually came all the way from Tel Aviv to come and present with us. And thank you, Lior. So Lior is with Ardor, and what he's going to talk about today is Ardor, everything from, there's the talk about the discussion about scalable blockchain technology, and this is therefore very much up BigchainDB's wheelhouse. So whereas BigchainDB is a database with storage, what Ardor is doing is the blockchain side of things with tokens and these sorts of things. So he will be getting into that. And so it's a very nice complementary piece in the overall system. And so he'll be talking about that, and he'll have lots of cool technology to talk about, proof of stake and many things. And then he'll be wrapping up with, closing it up with the token side of things. So I think that'll be a very nice wrap up for the evening. So once again, thank you for coming and joining us, Lior, for this evening.
Thank you, Trent. Okay, guys, I know it's been a long day for you. It's been a long day for me as well. I try not to bore you too much with. Jelurida is a company behind the NXT blockchain technology and our next generation blockchain, which is called Ardor. I'll tell you about it in a moment, but let's start a little bit with NXT. NXT is one more public blockchain that probably most of you never heard about. It was launched in November 2013 by an unknown developer, Satoshi-like unknown developer. It's completely new source code. It's not a clone of Bitcoin, written in Java. Block time 1 minute, 1 billion tokens were distributed in what is now called ICO to random people that paid Bitcoin, few Bitcoins to the issuer of the token. Through the Bitcoin Talk forum. It's based on proof of stake, which I will explain in a moment. But a bit about the technology. Unlike Bitcoin with its UTXO model, NXT has account, and accounts has balances. You set up a passphrase, a very long passphrase, that from which your private key and public key are derived. Your address is derived from your public key. We call it brain wallet. There are, of course, transactions. Transactions are packaged into blocks. As usual, each transaction has only single input and single output. The architecture of NXT, unlike Bitcoin, is much more flexible and designed for extensibility, but using the concept of transaction types. So instead of just moving value from one address to one address, we can easily use many building blocks for decentralized applications out of the box, like sending messages which can be encrypted and can even be removed from the blockchain, what we call prunable messages. We can set account properties. We can store data in the blockchain. On top of that, we already built the most common, what we call now smart contracts. Asset exchange, voting system, marketplace, anonymity, and several others based on feedback from real use cases that were requested. You of course pay transaction fees on all transactions. The transaction fees are the only reward to the miners that we call forgers, because there are no new currencies created. Everything was created from the beginning because it's proof of stake. Let's talk a little bit about proof of stake. So I won't go with you exactly how proof of stake works, but think about it. There are a billion NXT in circulation. Let's say that you have 1 million, then your chance to generate the next block is 1 in 1,000. There is no minor competition. You don't need huge hardware. It's all, you can run an NXT node on a Linux box with 2 gigabytes memory. There is a very strong debate in the blockchain community if proof of stake is safe or not. There are quite a few substantial arguments against proof of stake. One of them is what is called the nothing is stake attack, that instead of following the NXT blockchain, you figure out who were the original investors, get their private key, get their private keys because they don't care about them supposedly anymore. Try to find these guys, but anymore. And you can build a chain that will look exactly the same. Okay. In order to mitigate this, we do not allow a fork of more than 720 blocks. There is another problem with proof of stake. In proof of work, if you like to mine on another fork, you need to take half of your Chinese mining factory and put it on the other fork, so your hash power goes to 50% on the legitimate fork. In proof of stake, it doesn't cost you anything to mine on several different forks. Okay? But in order to perform such attack, you need a very large stake in the network so that you can generate majority of the blocks. It's much more difficult to get large stake in the network in proof of stake than in proof of work. In proof of work, you just need more mining equipment. In proof of stake, you actually need to purchase a lot of the tokens, and when you start purchasing it, of course, the price goes up exponentially. There are other claims if someone wants to really concentrate on this. Evidently, proof of stake works quite well. I just want to show you, to explain to you, this is how people mine Bitcoin and Ethereum. Okay? This is how one of our enthusiasts forges NXT. He has a solar panel, Raspberry Pi, and a wireless router. That's all you need, okay? Because you don't need to hash this meaningless problem and find the hash. The proof of stake works only based on your stake and not on your hashing power. Okay? One place where proof of stake makes much more sense than proof of work is in context of private blockchains. Because if you set up a private blockchain, it doesn't make any sense to put a miner on every desk of the user and that they will start competing with each other. Okay? It makes a lot of sense to separate the stake between the users based on their power in the network. So what people are doing, they are taking Bitcoin, private Bitcoin blockchain, and they are replacing the consensus mechanism. But the consensus mechanism is the heart of the blockchain. Same for Ethereum. And you can see that the Ethereum guys are talking all the time about moving to proof of stake. This is very important in order to get these blockchains into a private blockchain setup. But of course, switching from what is already proof of work to proof of stake is a huge change that I'm not sure if Ethereum will ever be able to accomplish. We are already there from the beginning. By design, we do not allow programmable transactions on the blockchain, also known as smart contracts. We do have another semi-flexible mechanism that we call smart transactions that allow you to vote about the transactions. The simplest setup is like a multisig wallet that you can ask 2 of 3 to vote, but we can do much more than that. You can vote by stake, you can vote by account, you can vote by a token that you issue on the blockchain and give voters in order to confirm transactions. We are also introducing actual logical operators into these smart transactions, which will be available in our next release, which is called the Ardor. So think about it as built-in smart contracts developed by the core developers themselves or contributors after rigorous code review, and not by third-party developers that the code could be less trusted. Still, problems can happen, even if it's the core developers, but the security is much better with this model. You can just see here all the smart contracts and building blocks that we have. The marketplace, asset exchange, which is relatively popular, messages that you can send between accounts very easily. I'll try to show it in a second. Voting. So NXT is running in production since November 2013 with very little problems. Currently have around 300 nodes, maybe more, over 2 million transactions already in the network. And now I'm going to do something really unique. I'm going to show your blockchain working, if it's going to work. Okay. Okay, so let's start with NXT. Okay, so with NXT, you see this is a login screen. I'm going to log in. This is currently the NXT testnet. Okay, you see this wallet comes out of the box when you install NXT. It's not something that third party develops, and it's all built on the extensive API that the NXT core already has. Just to make a little bit sense of this mess, this is your account address, the public address. This is my existing balance of NXT. This indicates or shows if I'm forging or not. This is a blockchain height. And here you see all the smart contracts. You see, we don't give you a command line now. You need to break your head how to implement. Everything is already developed and with user interface. Let's start. The simplest operation is just to send NXT between accounts. So I can take the address of another account, which is, give me a sec. So let's do this. I will just send the NXT to myself for now. This is here. I can calculate the transaction fee. For a simple transaction, it's going to be just 1. And I have, you see, this is the passphrase. Okay, the passphrase is all you need in order to access the account. If you lose it, you lost your font. If someone discovered it, he can steal your font. There is no wallet file. This is what we call a brain wallet. Okay, like as if you can remember this in your brain. Better put it in a password manager, but okay. Okay, so here I submitted a transaction to the NXT network. You can see it on the dashboard. It's currently unconfirmed. See, I'm losing my mouse. You can see that the previous transaction, this is its height, and this is the number of confirmations that it already got. Just another quick example. Let's send a message. Again, I'll send the message to myself, but you can see I can encrypt the message. I can say that the message is never deleted, so it's stored forever. But by default, messages are not stored forever. Only the hash of the message is stored forever in the blockchain. So after a while, defined by the workstation, the message itself is removed from the blockchain, what we call pruned, and only a cryptographic proof is left that this message ever existed. So let's submit. Just want to show you. Here you see all this is a phasing mechanism. This is all the voting models that you have for your transactions. Let's send also the message. All right. So this is NXT working stable in production for 3 years, and everything is good. So if good, why I'm here? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about if everything is so good, what is so bad? Okay. There is currently a fundamental problem in the blockchain world that people are not talking about too much. Okay, it's called the blockchain bloat. Think about, I always recall my Wikipedia donation from 2014 for $3. I don't care about it, they don't care about it, but it's still saved, it's still stored in the Bitcoin blockchain and will be stored there forever because there is no way to remove it. It's in the Merkle tree of the block, and every new workstation that joins Bitcoin has to revalidate all the transactions, because if it just downloads the blockchain as a database, it can end up on a malicious fork or on one of the forks of Bitcoin that are running around. So there is no, so blockchains, and I'm talking about NXT, I'm talking about Ethereum, I'm talking about Bitcoin, does not have a way to remove things, to forget things from the blockchain. Another huge problem that the previous speaker talked about is the dual usage of the token. Currently, all tokens are used both for network security, for mining, forging, and for transfer of value. Just think about what it is. Try to develop a wallet for Golem, okay? Of course, the users only care about the balance in Golem, but when they actually send a transaction, they need to pay gas. I always like to think about if I'm going to buy milk in the supermarket, the milk costs €1, but in order to pass it in the cashier, I need to pay $2 Okay, I need to deal with two types of transactions, two types of tokens. Go explain this to your users. It's a real problem for developing applications on top of the blockchain and masking it from your users that they are using a blockchain. Okay. So for this, after a lot of thinking and lesson learning, we came up with a new design, which we call Ardor. Okay, so Ardor is basically NXT 2.0. It has all the code base of NXT plus a few more building blocks. So, and the idea is that we separate the blockchain into parent-child chain architecture, where the parent chain is responsible for the security of the network, which means, in our case, proof of stake, only transactions that affect the balances of the forgers, of the validators of the blocks, needs to be stored in the parent blockchain. All the other transactions that affect the smart contracts, okay, the asset exchange, voting, messages, marketplace, everything that does not affect the balances is offloaded to what we call child chains. Okay, the forging only takes place on the Ardor chain, which has much less transactions than when you look at NXT with everything together. Each child chain has its own token. There could be multiple child chains, and some of the smart contracts work as global, like the assets, for example, are global to all the child chains. Of course, your account always gets you to all the child chains in which you have tokens. Some are local. I think the best way to try to understand what I'm talking about is just to show you. And we always, because the other guys are always talking in theory, I always like to show things because it's much clearer. Okay, so when you log in, you see this is Ardor, and you see it's very similar to NXT. The only difference is that when you log in, you choose to which chain you are going to log in, where Ardor, ARDR, is a parent chain, and we have several child chains. So let's pick some account. I think this one should do. Okay, so Ardor, and surprise, surprise, it looks like NXT, because it is NXT, okay, inside. However, there is a difference, okay? You see that I'm now on chain Ignis, and I have here all kinds of transactions, ordinary payment and messages, and marketplace purchase. And if I switch to Ardor, you see that these are only transactions related to the balances of Ardor and another strange beast that is called child chain block. Because what this architecture allows us to do is that after, say, 24 hours, all the transactions from the child chains can be pruned. Okay, because they do not affect the forger's balances, we don't need them in order to maintain the security of the network. So when I say pruned, they are removed from the blockchain. So if a new node now joins the blockchain, it only needs to download the Ardor chain, which is much smaller, and the last 24 hours of each child chain, and a snapshot of the existing balances. Because really, in most cases, what we care about is the final balances and not how we got them. However, sometimes we do want to see all the transaction history for a specific use case, okay, for our accounting, for example. In this case, we can set what is called an archival node. The archival node will store the full history of a child chain, but it's no longer part of the blockchain itself. It's just specific to this specific archival node. Okay? However, if I bring a transaction from a year ago, I can still prove that a year ago it was stored on the blockchain by hashing the transaction and proving that the cryptographic hash is saved in this child chain block transaction. Like, you see, the Ardor parent chain just saves the hash, but if I want to see, this is the actual transaction. You see, it was alias assignment. Okay? And this is, of course, not on the Ardor blockchain because this is one of the functionalities that can be pruned. Okay, so I think we talked about everything here. This is a diagram that explains how Ardor works. I'm not going to get into details here. We have, you can read about it on our website. Let's look a little bit about the project roadmap. And as you see, this is a project that is going on from 2013. This is not Golem that is going to develop something, or Tezos or these guys. We already have a proven technology, and we are building on top of it and improving it gradually. So if we look at the end of, we are now on Q3, and we are preparing to launch the Ardor mainnet in Q4, and then implement the pruning itself. Okay, but now that we have parent and child chain, we can tackle another problem that is a huge problem for blockchain scalability, because today every transaction submitted to every blockchain has to be processed by every node in the blockchain. Everything has to be massively scalable because everything has to reach the same consensus, the same balances, and so on. However, once you have parent-child chains, you only need to do that on the parent chain. The child chains can be now specific to specific application. Okay, like one child chain can be used for voting, one child chain can be used for asset exchange, one for identity management. Okay, and the nodes that are working with on the voting does not need to be aware of the nodes that are working on the identity management or the asset exchange. So it allows us to separate the blockchain network into subnets that only care about their specific use case. Now, this is not ready yet. Okay, it's a research project that we are working about, but we already have quite a good understanding of how this would work. Okay, now, as you know, as common today, we also have a crowd sale. Okay, because to develop all this wonderful technology, you need financing. You need to pay people. You need marketing. You need. So what we are going to do, the Ardor, the parent chain token, was already distributed last year to the existing NXT holders. Over 3 months, we had multiple snapshots and averaged everything. Ignis will be the first operational token of the first child chain. Okay, and for Ignis, 50% of the tokens again will go to existing NXT holders. The other 50% we are going to sell in a crowd sale. I'm not going to get into details about how the crowd sale will work. I would only say that we are managing the crowd sale on our own blockchain. In NXT, we like to eat our own dog food. So, and frankly, we have a very good setup for issuing tokens on the blockchain for this type of ICO. Just to give you a sense of it, we have a mechanism called controllable currency, which means that it's a currency that you can buy, but you cannot trade between accounts. Only the issuer account can sell it, and all transfers has to be between the issuer account and one of the users. There is no free tradability, so there is no problem that you start to sell the ICO and now everybody else is now trading at a different price while you are still in the ICO. Okay, and if you are interested, you can go to our website. I just want to show you how you would buy in the ICO. So in our own wallet, we designed a specific page that is actually allows you to buy the Ignis token. So you see, everything is recorded on the blockchain. Okay, there is no like a Bitcoin address that you need to send to it. You can say, we publish the price. You say how many units you want to buy. And of course, with everything, you need to put your passphrase unless you chose to remember it. And right now, I just bought into the ICO. You can see here other buyers. My transaction is still unconfirmed. In a few, once the next block comes, it will also show up here. Okay, so questions. Hit me with all you have.
Someone start.
When a child chain is pruned, is it replayable?
Just give me a second. I'll just turn this. Well, anyway, yeah. So
Effectively, can transactions be sent to a child chain that are never registered on the parent chain? So if the child chain is pruned, is that history then also lost, or could you replay from the original Genesis and recover all child chains if you would?
Okay, so the question is if we can lose child chains or we can always recover them. So all child chain transactions are recorded, their hashes are recorded on the parent chain.
But not the full transaction.
But not the full transaction. So if after 24 hours or whatever it's defined, the transaction is pruned and nobody set archival node to save it, this transaction is lost forever. But probably for good reason, because nobody cared about it. The effects of the transaction still remain, the balances, but the transaction itself is forgotten.
Who can create the child nodes?
Okay, so yes, so initially we are going to create the child chains. Only the developers will be able to create a new child chain. One of the reasons for this is also technical, that it's not simple to create this child chain, but it's also from business perspective, because what happens with assets and currencies, all the tokens that we have on the blockchain today are very simple to create, and people just use them as a toy project and not without real purpose with it. We want to make sure, at least initially, until the platform is mature, that every child chain is, has some meaning, that it's not just a toy project of someone.
So what will happen with Next? I mean, there will be support for how much longer, and what will actually happen to Next shareholders?
Okay, right. So with Next, Next is going to continue to run side by side, as long as people are willing to forge it and generate new blocks. And as you saw, you don't need miners in China to do that. All you need is a Unix workstation. However, in the ICO, we defined several levels of funding. The more funding we are able to raise in the ICO, the more features that we are going to add to Ardor, we are also going to port back to the NXT blockchain in order to get its lifetime longer. At least in the beginning, it will take time until Ardor is stabilized and battle proven. So NXT still has some future. As I said, it's an excellent platform for issuing tokens, for example.
But it'll die.
it's, you know, like every software company, the way it works, it sells you the existing version and now works on the new version.
True.
And at some point you always move to the new version. But I definitely see us continue to support NXT for the next 3 years, which is forever in terms of blockchain. So.
And I've got another question. Like, just looking at the recent price with NXT token, what is the price for an Ignis? So if you can tell me how much it is, there will be an arbitrage market for next tokens.
Ignis is not issued yet. There
Yeah,
is
but-
no price for Ignis.
Okay, but like, I mean, next tokens will, like, the next will die, and the tokens are traded currently, and obviously, like, everyone who holds next token will get issued 0.5
Okay,
Ignis
so
token,
I'll
and
stop
there
you
will be
here.
arbitrage
I'll
involved.
stop you here. I'm a software engineer, and making predictions about the future is definitely not
But
my
that's-
business.
But that's
Okay.
pretty easy, like, excuse me, but that's pretty easy, like, presenting an ICO and not talking about, like, how it'll happen,
Okay.
dealing with the NXT chain in the
Okay,
future,
so-
even if you cannot make predictions.
No, I'll tell you what. Ignis is an operational token, and people will buy it because they can use it. They will be able to use it on a scalable blockchain, which is Ardor. I assume that some of the applications that we currently have on NXT will migrate gradually, and therefore the value of NXT will be gradually reduced. But again, it's you know how it is to make prediction in this market. It's
Not true, but like, I mean, offering an ICO and saying, I mean, I was very happy with the airdrop of Ardor tokens coming out of nothing, didn't expect them from the initial next investment, but now that there is an ICO, I think that's a very valuable question, and I think that is a question that should be published way before the ICO. I mean, at least to show.
define the question. What's the question?
Like, the question is, what will happen with the next chain? And I see it'll die, but like, at some point, every stakeholder will ask himself the question, like, what will happen with the token? When is the right time to sell and sell? Like, I mean, I don't want to know any price prediction. I just want to know.
But this is you're asking me to speculate. I'm telling you that I'm going to support it for 3 years if I get enough funding for Ignis. If people won't use it, what can I do? If people want to use it, I will support it.
But if
Let's guys. We have more questions.
like, I mean, when will you publish the price of Ignis token? That at least.
The-
is
The
available.
next question, please. Really, I think it's helpful.
Yeah.
Let's take it offline. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you can also open source it, and then the community will start sustaining.
It's already, unlike many other blockchains, NXT is already open source. So, and Ardor will be as well. Yeah.
But maybe just a short follow-up question. Like, are you currently the only developers to Next?
No, there are quite a few developers. From some reason, I'm usually the representative.
But
Okay.
then, I mean, is it then logical that development would continue alongside Ardor? Like, if your company now focuses on Ardor, is Next not going to?
Assuming that we are able to raise significant funding using the ICO, there is really no reason that we won't continue to support both NXT
No,
and
this is
Ardor.
my question. Sorry, again,
Yeah.
right? Like, are there developers outside of your company developing Next?
No, Ardor and Next are developed by the same development team. As you saw, it's the same product under this.
But my question was different. Who can issue the request for archiving and
Anyone.
crouching?
Anyone, it's
And-
just a setting in the NXT properties file.
Okay. And the other question I had was the issuance of tokens for Ignis is recorded on the child chain, as I understand.
No, the Ignis crowd sale is recorded on the NXT blockchain
Okay.
as
so
a controllable
so
currency.
Okay, so it can't be removed.
It's
It can't be pruned.
no, it's not going to be pruned because it's
Okay.
on NXT. Pruning
Okay.
will be on Ardor.
Okay.
Okay.
Because that would be. That would be bad.
What about the proof of stake? Is an
Yes, so there is a lot of debate about, of course, the proof of work guys will always criticize proof of stake, naturally. Okay, but they do raise very strong arguments that we addressed in the software to mitigate all kind of theoretical attacks, because in practice it's very, very difficult to attack a network like NXT. I mean, it's possible that, you know, if the value of NXT is like Bitcoin, there is enough incentive to attack it in all kind of ways. Evidently, it works quite well. In NXT, proof of stake in NXT is very simple. I mean, I can explain to you in 10 minutes how it works, and you'll understand it. There are all kinds of suggestions today how to implement proof of stake in a more secure way that just causes enormous complexity that has its own security issues. When you introduce complexity, you introduce security issues. And of course, you need to store a lot more state, and everything becomes more difficult. So we are quite happy right now with how the next blockchain works, and we'll continue exactly the same with Ardo, with the same security model.
I redefined my question. I'm so sorry, but I think it's very valuable. So how are next hosts actually protected, not being... I mean, there is a high chance that there is insider trading by Jelurida itself if they set the Ignis price at a certain point. And I'm worried about that, and I think that's a valuable question we should not talk about entirely online.
Look, in blockchain, insider the trading is always on the table because everybody is anonymous.
Of course,
and even if there is no insider trading, you will always blame someone for it, but nobody can prove it.
But the core developer team has the chance.
The core Jelurida does not have a next. Unlike other development teams that hold huge balances of their tokens, Jelurida does not hold any next.
Okay, but I mean, the core developers hold next, and the people that are in charge of like bringing that information to the public, they can do that, and you know, like they have a huge information.
Whatever I will say, I will never be able to convince you if there is insider trading or not, because
let's open the floor to some other questions. Okay. You can continue this later, otherwise we'll be here all night. I don't think it's
fair enough.
New question.
What do you see as the main use cases for Ardor? Like, are you trying to...
So first of all, everything that you can do in NXT, if you believe in the future of blockchain, and you believe that asset issuance and voting and identity management and such applications will gain wide use, then NXT already has the building blocks. Now, the building blocks in NXT, they are not open. They are not smart contracts that anyone can program. So you only get 80% of your use case. So it's quite possible that some projects will decide that they cannot use the public blockchain and will create a private blockchain, okay? And then complement these missing 20% using Java development. It's not difficult to find Java developers and train them on the blockchain. But assuming you believe in blockchain technology, I mean, right now we are constrained by the blockchain bloat problem and by the fact that every node needs to process all transactions, and we are keeping the same functionality and solving two of the most fundamental problems. Which brings me to another interesting use case. When you have child chain, now imagine, you know how difficult it is for people today to get to NXT. They need to send fiat money to exchange to Bitcoin, exchange to Next. Only then they can buy tokens on Next. Same with Ethereum. With the child chain architecture, we are working with third party, with financial institutions to actually issue a pegged child chain. And pegged child chain, let's say that the big bank in Germany now respects every child chain token as equals 1-to-1 to a euro. Okay? Now it is very simple for you to trade assets against euro, not trade Golem against Ethereum. Okay? You're trading directly against the base asset, but you need to trust the third party to actually be able to pay real euro for your pegged euro tokens. Okay? So this is, for example, a use case that exists in Ardor and does not exist in NXT or any other blockchain at the moment. Yeah.
Question over here.
How does your proof of stake design deal with the event when the assets that are deployed on the chain are more valuable than the underlying token itself?
There is no direct relation between the value of the blockchain token and the value of the asset on top of it.
But if I want to tap the chain, right? I mean, if the assets that are deployed on the chain are more valuable than the total in circulation token, then there's incentive for me to attack.
Look, I don't think I can't answer this right now in this forum, but you know these are issues that have been debated over and over again. And if you really need to find information,
if your use case is the issuance of assets, if that's your core.
it's one of them. Voting is another issue. Identity management and asset naturally are all the fuss right now, but you don't know what will be in the future.
You seem to have an elegant technical solution, but what is your strategy regarding the acquiring the community? I feel like, for instance, Ethereum has a fantastic strategy towards developers, Ledger towards big companies. So what is your strategy on gaining the use case?
Okay, I think that's one of the reasons I'm here right now. But we have quite a few dedicated and loyal followers. I would say in the hundreds, okay, that follow us, you know, in the desert since 2013, and we have a very strong community. Like if you now have a question about NXT, you can go to a Slack channel, to our forum, to our dedicated help desk, and you'll get answers in seconds. I mean, much better than you'll get answers from IBM or Oracle or Microsoft, okay? It's actually amazing how well customer support works in these decentralized communities.
Maybe even better than offline.
In the same vein, and I have more questions if you want them. But where are you oriented? Like, you're a company that sells a product, but it's an open blockchain, but the components are centralized, designed by you. So are you orienting towards enterprise purposes, or are you orienting towards the public blockchain? That's completely unclear to me.
Yes.
Somewhere in the hybrid zone.
Okay, you are we are aiming at both. Okay, we have a lot of experience with approaching organizations with private blockchain solutions, but it's still too early. I mean, people today like to invite you to conventions, they like to invite you to demos, they like to invite you to training, they don't like to pay you, okay? So the private blockchains will come, but it takes a lot of time. I mean, we are talking with the technical people, they are trying to convince the managers, higher management maybe is not convinced yet. I truly believe that there will be a large market for private blockchain solutions. For now, our strategy is, first of all, everything is developed for the public blockchain. And from the public blockchain solution, we derive the private solutions. And sometimes we need to complement some features, like security, role-based authentication, and things like that, which does not make sense in public blockchain, but are needed always in private blockchains.
So that's your primary business target, private blockchains.
So definitely in the future, we intend to sell private blockchain solutions side by side. You see, it's the idea is like a freemium model. The public blockchain is like a demo. It shows you that this thing is functional and stable and has API and has a beautiful wallet on top of it. And you use it in order to get into the private solutions. And actually, most of our leads in the private business are from people that actually use the public blockchains.
Do you see any other interesting business applications for other blockchain?
Look, with blockchain, you have to think that whenever you see a configuration of entities, be it individual or businesses, that needs to work together but cannot trust each other, then today what you see is always some mitigator in the form of a lawyer, a clearinghouse, a government agency, something like this. Whenever you see such configuration, you need to think blockchain. Okay. Now, not all these use cases will move to blockchain. Maybe blockchain will end up as a niche technology somewhere, but it looks like there are many scenarios that you talk to people and suddenly another use case for blockchain emerges. Okay, I can share with you. Think about the way we are doing mobile roaming today. You have in Germany a contract with your cellular carrier that you don't pay for data, you don't pay for calls, SMS, you pay a global bill. But when you move the border to France, now you're starting to pay a lot. And I know there is some initiative to cut this off, but then you're starting to pay €5 a day or something like this, right?
Sorry, one final question over here,
okay.
and then we'll...
No, just getting to the blockchain. Why is it so expensive? Because all of these settlements is going to few clearinghouses that rub the cellular companies. If you could share a blockchain between all of them, then the costs diminish.
Question was more partly specifically for the Arthur blockchain, because let's say, example here we take Ethereum. The best business application for Ethereum is probably the initial coin offerings. Right?
For sure.
So what would you say before Arthur?
Again, you know about predictions about the future. I'm not good about it. Okay.
Let's go to the final question,
Yeah.
please.
Well, it seems based on your answers that you don't believe that much on the long term for blockchain, and the technical questions.
No, you misunderstood. You misunderstood. I'm just saying that there is a possibility that blockchain will replace databases.
Then why should I invest? Then why should I invest now? Because you're here to attract
Okay.
people.
Why should you invest in a token? Okay, so I would say that if you believe in blockchain technology, if you believe that in the future all the many of the processes that are today done manually will become digitized using a blockchain, then we are only at the tip of the iceberg with where the blockchain is. So you need to get early, and you need to be in there. And this is one of the ways you can get it. You can buy it. You can start experimenting. You can issue an asset. You can issue a poll for for the class in the university. See how it works. Learn what works well, what doesn't work well. How to develop the UI so it's usable. Okay, so if you don't get any tokens, you have to get your feet wet in order to start experimenting with this technology.
You have to answer again all those questions, because you answer all of them like this, that maybe in 2 or 3 years it won't be there anymore, and you don't know. I believe that in the future, whenever a class of children will need to collect money to buy a present to their teacher, they will issue a blockchain and record the money in the blockchain. It will become another option, like create a database. Do you want a blockchain? Yes. Okay, these are the validators. Okay. This technology has huge potential, but there were a lot of huge technologies with huge potential that didn't materialize. Okay, so but I'm a true believer that it will catch. Okay, that there will be not a killer application to the blockchain, but the blockchain itself is a killer application. Okay.
Okay, I want to end it there. Thank you so much, Lior, and all of our speakers.